So, today we're going to talk about designing your dream life. I think for me as an entrepreneur, this is something that a lot of people look to entrepreneurs to. How do you create a life that you're really excited about? How do you create a life where you're doing something that you're truly passionate about? This is something that a lot of us think about, but then we also get stuck in kind of this rut of doing the traditional thing. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my life, which is a very unusual life, both in India and anywhere else in the world. So just like all of you, I grew up in India, and my family moved here in 1992. So you can see some photos of us growing up in India. This was me and my family. My father was an IIT professor, and I always joke that although American parents are more Indian than your Indian parents. And by that, I mean that when I was growing up and when I was in high school and I was talking to my father about what I'm going to do with my life, he told me, well, you should become an engineer. That's what I did. And, you'll always be able to find work. You'll be able to make a lot of money. You're already good at math and science. So there's no reason why you wouldn't become an engineer. And so I went on to university and I did a degree in computer science. And which leads me to the next point, which is that, a lot of us get a lot of advice from people who really love us when we're trying to figure out what to do with our life. So where you are right now, you're in university, you're thinking about what you're going to do after university, and you get a lot of opinions, a lot of advice. A lot of it comes from your parents, and some of it's good advice. For me, I felt that maybe I got some wrong advice. A lot of the advice that you get is focused on survival, right? So your parents, they want you to have a job. They want you to have a sustainable income. They want you to buy a house one day. And so they're focused on helping you survive. But that it doesn't necessarily mean you'll build a life where you feel like you'll thrive. And so today, that's really what I want to talk about. I feel like each and every one of you here in this room has an individual life purpose, something that you are meant to do. Only you are meant to do that thing. And if you don't do that thing, nobody else is going to do it for you. And if you don't do that thing, you're also going to feel like there's something you still need to do, and you're going to kind of live a life feeling a little bit unsatisfied. And so the hardest part is figuring out, how you actually find that thing that you want to do, right? Like, what is your life purpose? So that's what we're going to talk about today. This is not a talk about me. It's not a talk about my life. This is a talk where we're going to workshop together. You're going to think, you're going to brainstorm, and you're going to think about who you really are. When we think about success, when you think about your dream life, a lot of the things that people imagine are, kind of the basic things, the stereotypical things that everyone thinks of when they think about their dream life. So, some people want to have certain cars. Some people want to have big houses. Some people want to buy luxury brands. Some people want to travel on a private jet one day. This is not what I'm talking about when I talk about finding your life purpose, building your dream life. These things are very superficial. And we all know, you all hear stories of that, that very famous actor who wasn't happy and had a drug abuse problem, or very powerful person who just wasn't happy in that life. So we all hear those stories. We know that. But at the same time, we still sometimes aspire to these things. But today I want to challenge you to go a little deeper. So we're going to talk about your own personal values. Now, each one of us comes from a family, and our families have their own values. So maybe your parents have a certain set of values, things that they value, right? And they're older than you, so they may value things like buying a house or getting a job or different things like. Now, you being from a different generation, can might have different values. And so the key today is to start this process of understanding what your personal values are. Your values will be different from the person next to you, and they start to give you a deeper idea of what truly motivates and inspires you personally as a person. And so here are a list of values. I want all of you to just take a minute and look at these values, and see if there's one or two that really stand out to you personally, just you as a person. If there's one or two values that you feel like, oh, that is more important to me than everything else here. So I'm going to give you an example from my life. So as an American who I grew up in India, I went to college in the United States, and then I chose to move back to India. And I get a lot of people asking me, why on earth would you ever do that? We want to go to America, and you've chosen to come here. And I think, understanding my personal values is really the answer to that question, because I have as one of my top values adventure. And so I really want to live a life that is unpredictable, that is adventure, that is full of different twists and turns. And I really felt a life in the United States would not give me that kind of sense of adventure as much as a life in India would. And so while stereotypically, I think, and I have, I am one of 4 children in my family. 2 of us live in India, 2 of us live in the United States. We all have different personal core values that relate to us. I think for me, India was able to give me that life that really spoke to my core value. So it's really important to start understanding who you are, what your core values are. And then I want you to, once you understand your core values, you start to look over the course of your life. So when you're looking forward into what you're going to do in your future, it's always important to also look back, right? So look back at your entire life. What are some of the dreams that you had as a child? Maybe completely unrealistic dreams, and your parents said, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to go to university, So we, as children, we sometimes have these crazy wild dreams before anyone else tells us that we can't do that thing. And those dreams, again, speak to something inside of you that really wants to do that thing. And so, it's important to, as you're thinking about what you want to do with your life, look back at your life, think about your dreams, and at the same time, find these moments in your life of what people they're called mini convergences. So moments in your life where everything really came together for you and you felt like you were on top of the world. We all have these moments. For some people, these moments are maybe a moment when your whole family was together for a holiday, or it could be a moment when you won a debate competition, or it could be that moment when you found out that you got into this university. So whatever that moment is, you kind of scan your entire life, from your childhood to your school years, to your middle school, your high school years, and then, up until your university years. And you look over your entire life and you say, where were the moments where I really felt like everything was coming together and I was so engaged with what I was doing? And again, those mini convergence moments for you are going to be very informative on who it is that you are and what it is that you were made to do. I think for me, I went to school, I studied computer science in university, and I went into the tech industry. And when I looked back at my life later on, I realized that a lot of my convergent moments were in entrepreneurship. So although I'd sort of forgotten about these different things that I had done, my convergence moments in my life were focused around, so for instance, when I was in school, I started a little cake stand in Missouri. When I was about 12 years old, I started baking cakes and selling them to tourists from Delhi. And I loved it. I mean, from the morning, I would wake up in the morning on a Saturday morning, and I was just ready to go. I would take over the kitchen, make a huge mess, rush out of the house with my cakes, get all of my friends around me as, my kind of employees in a sense, but also we were all working together. And then at the end of the day, I would count my cash, and I was so proud. And I think when I looked back at my life, I realized that was a mini convergence for me. It was a moment where I was really, really excited about this little system that I had built. And later on, it helped me realize that, I really wanted to be an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is not for everyone. I think, there's a lot of buzz right now around entrepreneurship, especially with Shark Tank. And it's a very, very challenging journey, but it's also very rewarding for those of you who really have that drive inside of you. So the last thing that we're going to unpack is this Ikigai chart. So again, as you're thinking about what it is that you want to do, what it is that you're meant to do, you have, what you love, the things that you love, versus what the world needs, versus what you can be paid for, and also what you are good at. And I think for me, actually, when I was growing up, when I was sort of deciding what career I was going to go into, I got a lot of advice on the bottom. What can you be paid for? I got a lot of advice around that when I was figuring out what to do with my life. But what happens is when you ignore what you love, you're doing something that maybe you're good at and you can be paid for, you start to feel a sense of emptiness. Similarly, when you focus on what you're good at, but you kind of ignore what the world needs, again, you sort of feel a sense of purposelessness, because you're doing something that you're good at. Maybe you really love it, but if the world doesn't need that thing, then it might not be worth doing. And if you do go ahead and do it, then you're going to feel like there's not really so much purpose to this. Similarly, if you focus on what the world needs, but you ignore yourself, so what you love, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, then you end up, in a life that where you don't feel like you're connected to your inner self. And so as you're thinking about what you're going to do after this, I really encourage you to think through all of these things, and think about how you can build a life for yourself where you're doing something you love, you're doing something that you're good at, you're doing something that you can be paid for, and doing something that the world truly needs. This is where you're going to build a life, especially a work life, where you feel a sense of balance and satisfaction on a daily basis. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about is envisioning your life. So you have a lot of people these days talking about the power of manifestation, and I don't believe in that really at all. I mean, it's very woo-woo, and I maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but I think there's something really powerful from being able to envision things in your mind and then work backwards. And so I'll give you an example. 6 years ago in my life, I hit a rock bottom. So I had followed a lot of wrong advice. I had gotten into a career in the tech industry, which for me was something that I was good at. It was something that I could be paid for. It was maybe something that the world needed, but I was not passionate about it, even in the slightest. And so I was feeling a sense of emptiness in my life. I was just moving back to India, so I had been living in other countries where I didn't feel that I had a connection to where I was living. And so I was 26 years old, and I was completely starting my life from the beginning. And I looked back and I was like, what have I even been doing for the last 4 years? Maybe I studied the wrong thing in university. Maybe I've been doing the wrong thing for the last 8 years. And I did this exercise where someone asked me to write a journal entry for yourself 5 years in the future. So 5 years from now, what do you want your life to look like? Mind you, I did this 5 years ago, right? And so I started to write down this kind of journal entry for myself of what my day is going to look like 5 years from now. And I thought I was single at the time. I had just come out of a relationship, and I wrote, 5 years from now, I hope to be married. And I wrote this whole day out for myself of, I wake up in the morning, I'll have coffee with my husband, I'll go and I'll be working in my own company where I do these things. And now when I look back at that piece of paper, that life that I wrote down on that piece of paper is exactly the life that I'm living today, 5 years later. And I think it really speaks to the point that it's very important to imagine and envision your future. And only if you can see it, will you be able to make it happen. And it's also very important when you imagine things and you envision things to then work backwards. So you really have to start believing that, okay, this is possible, this is going to happen. I deserve this. And then you start working backwards, right? So you say, okay, if I am going to, 5 years from now, if I'm going to have a successful company, then that means today I need to start researching the market and make a business plan, right? Or if 5 years from now I'm going to be married, for instance, if that's a goal for you, then today maybe you need to go out and start making some friends or whatever it is. So you have your goals, you have a vision for your life ahead of you. I think this is something like entrepreneurs are often very, very in the future. So we have very clear visions of what, and the easiest way to get an entrepreneur to talk for an hour is to just ask them about their vision, because most entrepreneurs are living actually 3 or 4 years ahead of where they are today, and they're constantly thinking about it. They're refining that vision, and that's how they're actually able to bring so many people together and bring things that are completely unreal to life through their companies and through their work. And so envisioning your life is a really important way to start creating a life that you're really happy about, a life that can actually be your dream life. And so I really want to challenge you, today you're going to listen to all of these talks. But after this, or maybe tomorrow morning, take some time, sit down by yourself, take out a piece of paper or do it on your computer, write what your day looks like 5 years from now. What does it look like? And be very specific. If you're drinking coffee, which coffee are you drinking? What do you do at 10 a.m. on that day? What do you do at 11 a.m.? Who is with you on that day? So be very specific about that, and then just put it away. Just write it down. Be audacious, put your dreams down on a piece of paper, and then you can just file that away. And you'll realize that's really somehow, slowly, as you're intentional about what you want to do with your life, everything always seems to work out somehow. Thank you.